Hello, everybody. I see that a lot of folks have already joined the webinar, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's just wait 1 or 2 more minutes for everybody to join before we get started. Okay, everybody, I think this is a great time to get going. I wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for attending Avo Automation's webinar on accelerating SAP testing like a pro. In this webinar, we'll be sharing the concrete strategies, tips, and tricks that we have learned from an in-depth experience in helping customers with SAP test automation. We'll also be diving into a specific case study of how we helped our Fortune 500 manufacturing customer increase their testing productivity by 3x as a result of automation. Now, just a few housekeeping points before we get started. We've put you all on mute to ensure for no disturbances during this session and so that you can take the most away from it. But that's not to say at all that we do not want to hear from you. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please make sure to note them down in the chat and we will address them during the Q&A session. Also, during the session, we'll be having a polling question, and we really encourage all of you to participate. And the reason we're doing this is that it'll help you get an understanding of the challenges that your peers face with SAP testing. And as a gesture of our appreciation for you taking your valuable time to be here with us today, each of you will receive an Amazon gift card within 48 to 72 hours of this session, and we'll be sending it to you via email. And make sure to wait right through to the end of the webinar because we have a great offer that could really help your business's test automation. Now, just to quickly walk you all through the agenda for today, we'll be starting off with Annalisa Camarillo, who's our Chief Marketing Officer, who will be walking us through who Avo Automation is and what we do. This will give you a good base of understanding for the information to come. Next, our CEO, Vidur Amin, will be walking us through why our Fortune 500 manufacturing customer was ready for test automation. Next, our Head of Customer Success, Chris Horn, will take us through a detailed demonstration of the pain points that our customer face and how Avo solved them through automation. Here you'll get a concrete understanding of what's really possible through intelligent test automation and a view of how you can apply it to your business. And we will end with our Q&A session, which is our favorite part of these webinars, where we address any of your questions. So if you have any questions whatsoever, again, please be sure to pop them in the chat or note them down and we can address them during this part of the session. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand the stage over to Lisa, who will take us through who Avo Automation is.
Excellent. Thank you, Armand. Let me also give our attendees a warm welcome. I hope everyone is staying safe and taking care during these challenging times. I think we're coming around a corner. So long as everybody just kind of hangs tight, stay united, stay safe, and we should be able to overcome such challenging times. So I want to say COVID has actually prompted the move to a more digitally embedded society, making the need for quality software even bigger today. But I'm sure I don't have to convince this audience of that. All of you are probably experiencing the proliferation of applications you're living and breathing, the need to develop the best software on the market, and the need to ensure that that is delivered rapidly and in highest quality. The latest OverOps survey, many of you may know this association called OverOps, found that 50% of the software engineers that they interviewed say they deal with at least 1 to 2 customer impact issues every month due to quality. You could just imagine what that must feel like for customers. And so the question that we ask is, so how do you address this? What is the best way to ensure quality and to still be able to deliver the most innovative software in the market? We believe the answer is to automate software testing. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. When you automate software testing, you can maintain quality, you can accelerate delivery, and then you also allow those quality engineering teams to spend more time talking to the business about ways to improve software, about ways to deliver innovation so that your business can stay competitive. So who is Avo? From day one, we've leveraged the IT and testing community, a lot of the people that we have here today, to build our automation solutions. And you'll see this reflected in a lot of the reviews that have been provided for our business. Starting from the top, we are proud to say that we are considered a high performer and leader in the G2 quadrant. And that you could go right onto G2 or even our website and you could see what those ratings look like. So far, 5-star customer rating across capabilities, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what those capabilities look like. Avo has been working with some of the largest enterprise companies in the Fortune 500, and I'm talking about businesses like Voya Financial, Emerson Electric, and Sony, our most recent one. It's exciting times because we always look and aspire to helping our customers achieve the best that they can with quality software. Everything we designed into our solution was compelled by a customer need. And so I'm just going to point out a couple of things here that I think are important. Number one, we are the first to have unified process discovery, RPA, and test automation. The emphasis today is test automation, but I do want you to know that you can seamlessly work with any of our solutions, put them together into an environment, and it's really easy to flow between process discovery or all the way to test automation. I'll talk about that in a little ahead. So enough about us. Let's talk about our customers. This is the typical journey that we see for quality engineering teams. Those challenges that you see here probably look pretty familiar. We're still seeing upwards of 85% within QA environments are manual. And if they're not manual, some of the challenges that we've heard are processes are a little disparate, still in the waterfall format of processes, or those processes are disparate, handled across any number of tools. As these challenges amass, quality and delivery decline, just as you see there. And when customers reach that trough of low return, what we recommend, it's time to rethink your end-to-end quality assurance framework. It's time to consider automation. And if you already have considered automation, it's time to ask questions about whether or not it's doing what you need. It's accelerating speed to market, it's helping you ensure quality, and it's enabling, as I mentioned, that QA team to be much more strategic in sharing the insights of what they're learning about that valuable software that you're taking to market or that you're using to support the business. With these challenges in mind, we talk to clients about 3 specific and important founding principles to test automation. That's intelligence, simplicity, and speed. Speed is pretty self-explanatory. Simplicity means it's super easy to use the platform. Once you implement test automation, it should be easy to make changes. It should be easy, it should just work. And these are some of the qualities that are inherent in our solutions. Intelligence is about AI, and we start with intelligence because everything that we've designed, we've started with AI in mind. So how do we help you? As I mentioned, we are a full automation solution provider. So we have a whole suite starting from process discovery all the way to test automation. And the things you're going to get from us is, again, ease of use, no code, test automation platform with heterogeneous coverage. So whether it be SAP or it's Oracle, we cover any application. Just based on any number of applications that you're using in your environment. Today, we're going to focus on Avo Assure for SAP. And my colleagues here, Vitor, as well as Chris, are going to take you through how, for one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the Fortune 5, have delivered stability. They've been able to save upwards of 45% in overall testing costs, and I'm excited to have them show that to you, not only demonstrate what this manufacturing company faced as far as challenges, but then also demonstrate how our solutions were able to address those challenges in real time. Armand, back to you for our polling question.
Thanks, Letha. And I hope this gives everybody context about who we are as an organization. And again, if you have any questions at all, please make sure to note them down or pop them in the chat. And now we wanted to move on to the poll question where we really wanted your thoughts on what are your SAP testing challenges. And as you can see right now, a poll should have popped up on your screen. And we're going to leave this open for 45 seconds. So if you could take the time, just pop in your answer, and then we will review them together. And just to run you through some of the options, it could be that your SAP application testing is tedious and fraught with errors. It could be that your testing process is outdated or fragmented. Or it could be that your test automation solution doesn't even support SAP. And it also could be the case that you actually don't have any issues and that your SAP releases are already fast. And the last option is that it's a combination of the first three challenges that we identified. So I'm just going to leave this open for about 10 more seconds. If you could, please be sure to pop in your answer on the poll. Okay, great. Thank you all for participating. This is amazing. We're seeing a lot of responses. And as you can see on your screen, a lot of you are saying that your SAP application testing is tedious and fraught with errors, about 20% of you. And also several of you are saying that your testing processes are outdated or fragmented. And it's good to see that a few of you are also saying 15% are saying that your test automation solution doesn't support SAP. Which is a big challenge for a lot of people. And there's also a few people that say that they have no issues with SAP releases and that they're fast. And 22% of you are saying that it's a combination of the first three challenges in A, B, and C. So that is really, really helpful in understanding the challenges that a lot of us face with SAP testing. With this, I would like to invite our CEO, Vidur, to give us some context about how and why our manufacturing client was ready for automation.
Thank you, Armand. Let me just pull up my presentation. All right. So folks, thank you again for joining us today. The time you've taken out to spend this morning with us. So before I get started, let me quickly give you an overview of our client. Our customer is headquartered in the Midwest of the United States. They're a global manufacturing customer with over 200 sites across the world. They had a new CIO that had come in with a goal to really deliver on digital transformation. And as part of that, a core objective was to move from a project-centric delivery approach into a product-centric delivery approach. I'm sure most of your organizations are working through similar transformation initiatives today. And as they went down this path, they embarked on moving from a traditional waterfall methodology to an agile methodology. It's a simple goal of delivering functionality every 2 weeks or 1 month instead of the traditional quarterly or half-yearly release cycles. As they started to do this, they ran into a major problem around releasing high-quality software at the end of each cycle. That's when they reached out to Avo, and we worked to form a meaningful partnership that delivers on their overall strategic vision. A little bit about their technology stack to give you a broader perspective here. It was fairly vast. As you can imagine, most large enterprises have built a whole bunch of their own applications, have bought cutting-edge new applications, all cloud-based, and of course, all of the businesses are typically powered by powerful ERPs like SAP or Oracle. In this case, the client had a pretty large instance of SAP using a majority of their modules. One thing that a lot of these teams noticed as they tried to change or deliver new functionality at the pace that they were trying to is every single sprint cycle, their quality teams were bombarded with work towards the end. And this really put a huge amount of load to get the functionality out, but get it out with top quality. And a lot of times, some of these slip-ups did happen. That's when we started to engage, and we mentioned, let's look at leveraging Avo Assure for test automation to accelerate your business process testing. And what I mean by that is, let's not just focus on testing one particular application or individual applications, but let's test the end-to-end process in a common heterogeneous workflow, all like Lisa had mentioned, in a no-code approach. What we noticed as the client continued to use the platform is, one, over time, they started to become faster and faster at the speed at which they could build out automation. It became much easier for them to maintain their automation. And at the end of the day, SAP, being such a mission critical system to all of these businesses, has to be thoroughly tested. And with the client, we noticed that they were able to test everything, see back and said that they're very, very comfortable with the platform. They're confident of the speed at which they can automate and meet those sprint cycle delivery windows. Finally, by doing all of this, their IT teams were able to move towards that goal of agile transformation and digital transformation, where they could release at will, but most importantly, release high quality software when they wanted to. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Chris, the head of customer success, to show you a product demo, to give you a feel for Avo's powerful capabilities and how we address some of our customers' specific pain points. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Vitor, so much for that. And also Lisa, let me make sure I'm sharing my right screen here. I am, and switch over. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for your attendance, and I echo the words of Lisa. I hope everyone is safe and well out there. I've got some exciting things to show you, but before I do that, I really just want to delve in a bit from a root cause challenge and pain point standpoint when looking at this manufacturing customer that Vitor was giving a business overview to. And when looking at the root cause challenges, yes, they had a myriad of other issues and challenges, but at a root cause, a baseline perspective, it was really spread across manual testing or semi-automated testing, which we're really lumping into overall manual, not enough automation. And the challenges around, especially as the case within SAP, multiple technologies, application-based technologies that really do get in the way or can get in the way in a couple different ways. And that is, you have a very fragmented set of solutions out there in the market today, some of which are very focused on certain technologies, others in other areas, technologically speaking. And then if you implement those, you're forced to look at managing not only the different applications, but your teams accordingly. So you're jumping in and out of these different platforms potentially, or maybe not at all, and you're attempting to cover all this manually, right? It's quite messy. It's quite messy, quite challenging. So from a root cause standpoint, the very eminence of their challenge and ultimately their pain point came or stemmed from these two areas. And that led to, from a resulting standpoint, which is what Vitor was speaking to overall from a business point of view for this manufacturing customer of ours, they were seeing low productivity by comparison to expectations where they wanted to get to, but also higher costs. Higher costs relative to those expectations and where they thought they should be, but higher costs in some cases based on the approach they took with the different applications, the different team assignments, and so on and so forth, all right? And with Avo Assure, when we stepped in to assist them, we were able to bring a unification, a heterogeneous approach, okay, to their application testing relative to those technologies and the automation needed to resolve the manual testing and even semi-manual or semi-automated testing, and really automate it all and be able to do so not only from a scenario standpoint, but end to end. And so I'm looking forward to show this to you. So in the demo that I have set up, and I'm going to admit, full transparency on a couple fronts here. So first of all, I'm going to show you a snippet of the order to cash, what would be process flow. Now, for all of you experts out there in SAP or those that live in this environment, Forgive me for doing this. I know I'm not doing this the full justice that is needed, but I don't have all the time that I need either to give you really a full, in-depth, end-to-end. So I apologize for that. If you're interested in seeing that, please contact us. We'd love to spend that time and show you more in-depthly our capabilities. And I bet by the end here, you'll want to do that as well, given some other surprises I have at the end that I think you'll find notable and powerful as well. But in terms of what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to give you an idea of how we can quickly and easily create test scenarios and underlying test cases without writing any code. We are a no-code platform. I want to make that very clear up front. And I'm going to demonstrate not only how quickly and easily we can do this, but I'm purposefully going to, again, part of that snippet of execution, I'm going to show you this across a Fiori interface, a web-based interface, interacting via test case end-to-end with that of a native or legacy S/4HANA environment, right? Because again, I want to show you not only the ease at which a test case or a scenario and underlying test cases can be created, but do this across different application technologies, okay? And it doesn't end here in terms of those technologies, and I have a slide to really point that out as well. The other bit of full transparency is I'm going to do this in a bit of a reverse order that would normally occur. Admittedly, you would do your test planning up front. I'm going to show this at the end. Why? Well, as I just said, I want to get into the meat of how we assist our clients, our customers, to accelerate, create the necessary automations, test automations that they require to solve those root cause issues. And if I jump into the test planning, that's going to kind of bog us down in the beginning. I want to get right into the heart of things. So we're going to start capturing screens and objects, and we're going to reuse those screens and objects within our test designs and so on and so forth into the execution process, okay? So without further ado, let's jump into a demo. So let me switch over to my demo screen here. I'm going to go ahead and fire us off in the screen capture case. And as noted before, as you saw in my flow, we're going to start capturing the Fiori login screen. Quite simply, we're going to capture by pointing and clicking the username, the password, and of course the login button. These are going to become objects that we're going to use later on in our test design process, all right? Now we're going to switch over and capture the other navigatable needs that we have, right? So there are objects or elements that need to be captured so that as a user would step through an application given a current sequence, we're capturing those objects so that we can create in a step-oriented manner the very test cases and execute those accordingly, right? While we're doing this, I want to point out we're not grabbing positions on the screen. So it's not as though underneath the covers, we're grabbing the actual location, screen location, kind of pixel, row, column. That was done in very early generation work that I suppose some might call computer vision. The computer vision we're using here is highly intelligent. It is AI based and it does have a learning capability to it just the same, right? So we're capturing the screen, we're identifying the screen relative to its technology, then identifying the underlying or inlaid objects, right? And this can be both fields as well as logos and whatnot on the screen. Everything can be an object for us, right? And we're doing it in a non-positional way, as I just mentioned. So if things do move on the screen, we're able to track and move with them. I want to make that point very, very clear. Okay, as we're doing this, you're seeing as those items are being selected, right? They're highlighted as well. For expeditious purposes, when we create those objects, we give them a computer-generated name. But you can go in, and we recommend this, and rename those as you're seeing right now on the screen, so that you can attribute those specifically to field names, object names, however you see fit, which become very, very helpful in the test design process. All right. You're also seeing a number of these sequences, the append checkbox being selected, another powerful capability. Where you start doesn't mean where you end. You can constantly add to the capture process, so you can start with the need to capture certain parts on the screen and you can add objects within a screen. You can also copy screens, and I'll point this out later on, to further expedite and accelerate test case creation. We support capturing as an object or objects tables, and you're seeing we're capturing the items tables here within a create work order process. All right, and you're seeing these in a computer generated form. We're also renaming the save button that we just selected as well. So great flexibility here for you as a designer. We also enable the ability to assign different parts of this. So for QA managers that are thinking about, my goodness, I have a different designer versus a different tester, right? Someone who actually executes, we've got that covered, and I'll show you that later on in my demo towards the tail end. So now we're switching over. We've just handled the Fiori side of login and create work order, create sales order, my bad. Now we've stepped into the S/4HANA part of the demo. So we've done the login. Now we're actually taking, or we're going to continue this sales order that was created and starting to test as though the delivery part or portions of that work order were adjusted, right? So we're really looking at this from a user flow end-to-end perspective. Okay, very powerful. Instead of uniquely just specifically looking at an individual scenario, starting to bring testing into the world of what users experience and provide that level of automation relative to just functional testing where you're just looking at a specific area, and often things are missed, as well as the user experience parts of that. You're typically not testing those. In this case, we're also testing those experiences. Okay, so we've finished our capture, our object capture, as well as our underlying screen capture. We're now going to step into the test design process. So this is where we're going to take those objects, and yes, those screens that they're connected to, associated to, and we're actually now going to take those and associate them to what we call keywords, basically pre-built functions. You're not going to see any code being written here. That association of these over 1,500 keywords are going to come into play. And let me go ahead and fire this off now. Okay, and again, we're going to follow the same sequence when doing our test case design. We're going to start with the Fiori side and the logon or login process. And of course, since it's web-based, we're going to initiate a browser. We're going to navigate that browser to a specific URL, all right? Then we're going to go ahead and apply the username object, right? And then we're inputting single variables or values here, okay? You certainly can stream in external values as well. We also have the ability to encrypt passwords, so you're not passing clear text within your passwords and violating what would be other privacy or governance rules that you have within your business during your testing or for your testing. Okay, and lastly, we're applying the login button. Now we're going to run the debug mode, and we're going to do this at the end of each one of our test case designs. That passed successfully. So now we're moving on to our navigation flow. If you remember, there's a series of menus, if you will, and submenus that we need to navigate through, and so we're orchestrating that by way of, in a stepped-oriented manner, by way of our test design, okay? And we're going to debug that, and so you're going to see us start to navigate our flow. And again, you could combine all this together. I'm choosing to do this separate so that you can see how this can be orchestrated in a more simplified way. You might take, once you're up to speed with this, you might take a more complex way or need to, okay? So we're debugging the initial create order sequence. And so while this is running here, I also want to point out that on the left, you can see the debug. It says debug on, and you can see a number of browsers that are listed, okay? You probably saw this that said scrape or capture, right, during the capture phase. The bottom line here is we support numerous browsers. In fact, essentially all of the mainstream browsers, okay? We do this across the board, not only for our capture capabilities, right, or that step in the process when capturing screens and also objects, but we also enable this very same capability when debugging. So you could capture with Internet Explorer and debug with Google Chrome, right, or any other browser types. And you're not limited to doing it on demand just one time. You can choose whichever ones you would like. So during that test design phase, you can thoroughly vet and prove out your design works as expected without waiting to run it through a full execution cycle, right? Which just adds time to where you ultimately want to get to. It further delays potentially where you want to get to. So we are providing a number of different mechanisms and capabilities along the way to not only harness the power up front and empower those various users, whether it be someone performing design, someone performing the test case development side, right? All the way through to, and you'll see later on, the execution capabilities that we have, right? So we're still on the Fiori side as we're building out our test case with our order creation, right? And we're about ready shortly to switch over to the S/4HANA side. We're just finishing up the debug on this, okay? And now we're doing the S/4HANA login, right? So we've got to log into that system. And no surprise here, because this is a native application, we're specifying a location locally for where that application is installed. And then following the same context of username, password, again, can be encrypted, clicking on the button, right, appropriately. And now we're running a debug of exactly that same login sequence. All right, so now we're moving into that create delivery phase. So we've created the sales work order, at least we're testing the creation of it, right? And now we're setting up, and there's multiple test cases that I've established here. Again, sequentially building this out so you can see the navigated flows along the way, even on the S/4HANA side. But ultimately, we're going to be moving into testing the change delivery mechanism within the quote to cash side of S/4HANA, right? And so here we are running a debug on at least this first test case, and it was successful, okay? As you move forward, at any point in time on the right, you can see we have this icon called screenshot, right? You also probably saw this during the capture phase. So we always want to make sure that the information, the contextual information, is at your fingertips. So you can actually click that screenshot and you'll see literally for that screen, that object, when it was captured, okay, and where it was captured. So you always have that reference point, okay? So we've now finished, again, just to recap, the capture, right? What I like to call the intelligent capture, because it's not location sensitive, of screens and objects. We've now created our test cases. We've designed those test cases without writing any code. So now we're going to step into the execution phase. And here, this is going to break out in a couple different ways, right? I'm going to show you up front first what it looks like end to end, right? Which again, tying this back to our manufacturing customers and a number of other customers we have, this is where they really need to get to. Not just the individual scenario testing, but I want to tie scenarios together really to portray the way my users are using my application or applications in sequence, right? Today we have e-commerce applications front-ending ERP big business enterprise applications, right? And again, these cross not only vendor types, but also application types and technologies. So that's where, again, getting to the end-to-end needs. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to delve back into the quote to cash part and a specific area to start to show you not only how we can execute, but also the results of that. So let's go ahead and jump in. Just being sensitive to time here, right? So what you're seeing, I'm going to pause just for a moment. You see all of the scenarios that are available, actually far more than what I showed you. Again, part of that full transparency comment I made front on or in the beginning. We have a number of scenarios and test cases that are actually part of the overall mind map that are part of this demo. I've shown you a snippet of this, but as part of the execution, I really wanted to show you the full breadth of that end-to-end establishment and how you can execute from a suite standpoint, that end-to-end need. You can choose to select just a specific scenario if you so wanted to. There might be a need to do that, or a few, or select them all. Really give that end-to-end execution, a test execution need and coverage that you so desire. And also for each of the tests, as you'll see here just in a moment, okay, for each of these tests, you can actually specify a separate what I like to call is a stream of data to be input into that test. So instead of just a single line of data, which is what you saw me use in the design phase, the test case design phase, and that worked well for debug, right? Just sort of plug in some variables and values and whatnot, pop up some messages along the way. That was great. When we come to actually executing either a scenario or the end-to-end, you likely want to bring in some real-world data, and you want to do it in a broader way, right? That covers your needs. Another thing you want to test for is, do I expect this to be a true condition case or a false? In other words, is this going to be a negative test case? If you think about the logon, right, or login sequence, I mean, that's a simple one, but you definitely want to not just have a positive, one that's true, but also how can this fail? How do I expect this to fail, and how do I test that, right? And the other thing too is you think about the different scenarios there, and then you start thinking, oh my goodness, I have to create n number of those. Well, yes, but not so fast on the time it's going to take to do that with our test automation. You can easily copy the positive or true expected test case, the screens and objects, and turn that very quickly and easily into a negative, right? A false test, right? Very quickly. And I'll show you, it has to do with our object reuse capabilities and the ability to quickly copy. So that's also a capability of ours, and one that further helps expedite or accelerate the overall test case creation and that coverage need. Because coverage isn't just, width, but it's also depth. And depth gets into not just true cases, but also negative or false test cases. So we're able to, everywhere along the way here, we have that enablement in place to do this quickly and do it thoroughly and fully. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move us along here to another exciting part, all right, where when we do go ahead and execute or choose to execute a test case, right, however we've chosen whether individual scenarios or do the whole shooting match, end to end, you now can choose whether you want to run it, well, locally, which you might want to, or here's another really powerful feature, right? Submit it into what would be a distributed testing environment. We fully support parallel testing, as many call this, and parallel testing comes in at least two forms if you want to try simplifying it. It's parallel testing where you can run n number of tests within or on a machine, which we support, and do that also within a pool of servers and VM-based infrastructures. And we support that. And that's the notion here of what we call ICE, that's our execution engine, an ICE pool. So you can have n number out there. And as mentioned, and Vitor brought this up about the time it takes to test, testing windows. These are for QA test teams, they're always under pressure to do something faster and keep up with the development teams. Unfortunately, but true. And sometimes that keeping up can be challenging in two areas, one of which I'm going to save for just a little bit, but the area of execution is you have a tight test window that might be 24 hours. You need to get X done in that 24-hour period. Well, you can't run X locally. There just isn't enough time, CPU, resources, etc. And trying to run that on separate individual devices is even more challenging to configure. So in this case, using our smart scheduling, you can submit the execution of a test, yes, even end-to-end, into a pool, and we will understand the pool of those resources and parallel execute those tests across that pool to fit that window. Okay, so very, very powerful capability as well here. So let me go ahead and run or continue to run this. And now I'm going to go ahead, now the test is run. So take us into a report here. Okay, and so no surprise, again, for time purposes, I'm going to run us through a very quick review of the reporting that we have. It's quite extensive. In this case, you're seeing that all the tests passed. Well, the reason for that is because, as you saw, we debugged those tests and they were successful. Obviously, those that passed or some percentage you're going to see, and those that failed or some aspect at a scenario level, that will show up, again, looking at the full allotment of tests that were run. We also provide the ability that when you dig further into a specific scenario, right? So now we're drilling into a scenario, we're showing you the steps, right? So now at a scenario level, you can see what passed and what failed. And you'll see the status column here. You can actually click on either passed, but more appropriately failed steps and see where they failed, literally getting back to that screenshot in the objects to really give you a visualization of where and why, which then helps you go back and render and remedy the problem, okay, that likely was encountered to cause the test to fail. Okay, lastly, we're going to step into test planning. Again, as I mentioned, this would typically be done up front, okay? And I'm going to do this in two ways. I'm going to show you the end-to-end aspect, so you get a full breadth of really what's behind this, this test, really the test plan here, and you'll see all of the underlying scenarios. And then I'll also give you a snippet of the quote to cash and sort of drilling down again as to how that looks underneath it all. And then I'm also going to point out the assignments part, which I know I touched on earlier, but I want to show you the visualization of that as well, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the end-to-end aspect. So when you look at this entire end-to-end Fiori and S/4HANA, this is what it looks like. And literally you can zoom in and zoom out, right? I mean, fancy feature, but needed as you get that breadth that would likely occur with these very large but very critical end-to-end tests or any end-to-end test that would be created, right? In our case, this is wide and broad, and so I've given you a little bit more of a zoomed out view of this. Sorry if it's causing some of you to put some glasses on or whatnot. I have mine on for that purpose. But from the standpoint of what's behind each of these scenarios, like, so what further detail? Because you saw there were screens and there were objects and there was test design. So let's go ahead and take a look at that really quick. Okay, so again, we're going to go ahead and look at the quote to cash, and we'll look at the S/4HANA portion of that, right? That we walked through and we did design on, right? So some of these screen names and these also the scenario will look familiar to you, as well as the test cases we designed. So this gives you an idea of within each of these scenarios, right? We have n number of branched screens, right? And so this gets into how you wish to design your basically your tests, and that varies depending upon what it is you need to test and how appropriate that is, how appropriate to execute, not just design but execute those tests would be. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and move on a little bit here. And I've mentioned before that for QA managers or those that have to manage and administer such environments, we really work hard to support them as well, and how they likely manage their environments now, maybe even with their manual testing. So now we want to intertwine and bring in the ability to bring test automation. It doesn't mean you need to completely reorg or change what you're doing. We can fit in as a fabric into that ops that you currently have. And we do it in two ways. We have the idea of task assignment, right? And you would assign to members of your team accordingly, design tasks and execution tasks, right? In some cases, you might have those that do design, they'd also do the execution. That's fine, you would assign accordingly. But where you have a split design and execution tasking within your ops, we certainly support that. Naturally, we support the ability to assign users, all right, pulling it from within your domain infrastructure, right? So no extra work there on your part. And you can assign for prioritization purposes or expectation setting, start date and end date, right? And you can also choose whether you want to give all of a specific test to that user, right? Or you want to assign a portion of it. And we use the propagate feature to support that as well, okay? So with that, now I'm going to jump over to a bit of the surprise. I said, or I made mention that there's a bit of a surprise, and I find this quite exciting. So as easy as it is, and it truly is very easy to apply or move from being a manual-based or semi-manually based test team for quality control and administration purposes to full test automation. It's as easy as it was demonstrated. No code testing. We have actually gone a step further here. We have pre-built test scenarios and underlying test cases, right, for quote to cash, procure to pay, ship to manufacturing, and record to report processes for both SAP ECC and S/4HANA, right? So these are ready to use. You literally would install them in your environment, and it gives you a huge jump forward as to finalizing your test case creation. In many cases, you can use them as is, but you would likely go in and adjust some aspects of those test cases that you saw me do from a step-oriented manner based on your environmental needs, maybe how you're going to execute end-to-end, and so on and so forth, okay? So let me go ahead and walk you through what some of these look like, okay? And again, you've got the full breadth here. We're gonna jump into quote to cash, and I'm just gonna move back and forth to literally show you the breadth of this. Breadth is an understatement as to what we've provided here. And I'm gonna stop, we're gonna move back here to the right, and I'm gonna stop here right in the middle. And I had made a comment earlier about reusability or the ability to copy. And you've seen a lot of the icons that show the scenario, and more importantly, the screen, the underlying screens. Where you see the recycle icon sitting on top, it's where we have even utilized our own capabilities within the pre-built test cases where we've reused, right, existing screens, right? So we've even applied our own reusability, again, having done it in a very simplistic manner where you're taking what exists, copying it over, renaming it, because it does need to have a unique name, probably no surprise there, and then carrying forth with whatever augmentation is needed within that test case, all right? So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and finish the demo here, and I'm gonna switch back over to my slides, all right? And move on to a summary, and I alluded to this a little bit along the way relative to our overall platform capabilities. And we very much focused on the SAP side, right, in terms of the technological capabilities that we have, what we refer to as our computer vision. And we focused on Fiori and S/4HANA for the demo, but we support a number of other SAP related areas as well as non-SAP like web applications, desktop applications, mobile, right? All of these would intertwine either within an SAP environment, the ecosystem as it stands today, or where those other vendors that would participate within that enterprise. And again, there is a need to not only set up a test automation, but also test from an end-to-end standpoint, thinking of that user testing from a usability standpoint, and not only whether at a field level inputs are good and correct, right, or you're accounting for any negatives that might occur there, but also the flow, right, the experience as well. Bitter had mentioned Salesforce, just the same, we have that. And then lastly, but not leastly, this is often forgotten, but we support Citrix. Citrix, obviously, for those of you that don't know, is a way of virtually displaying really any screen. The trick and challenge with Citrix is it literally is an image, right, of that application. So regardless of the technology that is the basis for that application, whether it be web or even Fiori or S/4HANA, when it's shown in a Citrix environment, it's literally made up of thousands of pixels. It's an image, okay? We support that environment as well. So we not only have pre-built intelligent algorithms, right, that aren't position sensitive, I want to emphasize this, but we also, utilizing OCR computer vision, we're also able to work with image-based environments like Citrix just the same. So if you wanted to have a test scenario that tested a user's experience in and across the use of Citrix, you could certainly do that as well. I've touched on our no-code environment. We certainly support API testing. And to this end, I realize API testing, some of you are thinking, hey, wait a minute, there's not a screen involved or an object tied to a screen. That's true. There isn't. You would still go into your test design within a test case, and you would utilize the appropriate keywords that we have pre-built to initiate actions for API testing. And on this note, I also want to point out something else, that we don't require a screen to exist, even to create a screen and an object. I know it sounds kind of strange. This is another powerful capability that we have within and across our platform for Avo Assure. And that is, when you think about agile environments, it's often the need that QA teams have to work, and they do work alongside their development counterparts, right? Those that are writing the code, and they're asked to keep up, right? Remember I talked about those test windows? It's not just execution, it's keep up with how we're developing the application. And there are team discussions, there's sprints that speak to the expectation of how screens will look. Well, QA test teams can actually create a screen, a placeholder, and the objects as placeholders that they anticipate as a result of their sprints, their agile sprints. And then when those screens are actually made available, they can capture those screens and they can merge them together. Okay, so again, enabling QA teams to get, if you will, in front of, or certainly stay up with their agile development counterparts. Very, very, very powerful capability, certainly important for agile development teams that also certainly do a lot with APIs as well. And then lastly, but not leastly, relative to our platform capabilities, we integrate with a number of other important environments. Speaking of agile, those on the CI/CD, continuous integration and delivery environment or environments, we support that all the way through to version control with GitHub. Okay, and so with that, let me just summarize and take us back to a summary of the benefits that we provide to that manufacturing company. And I can imagine at this point, a lot of this probably, you probably foresaw this, right? And it's very true. Moving from a manual environment, even a semi-manual environment where, as I had noted, up to 85% was in that state, there was a lot of gains overall, and certainly that from a coverage standpoint when thinking about automation. And in our case, bringing in our platform, working with this large manufacturing customer, we were able to establish over 90% increase in test coverage, right? The quality shot way up. I mean, it went up significantly. Not only in time to execute, and I'll touch on this in a moment because this comes from two other areas as well, or maybe unifies from two other areas, but the quality shot up because you're not relying on the potential of human error or maybe missing the run of a test. We're staging these, we're firing these tests off from a scheduled standpoint, right? So as you saw, the system is taking over and it's providing the results in a reporting or report-oriented format to which there's a review process. So we're not only able to collapse testing windows, but the thoroughness of the testing is greatly increased, so quality goes up as well. And also in this same vein, there's not a need for separate regression testing and new functionality tests, which further adds to, well, what kind of testing am I doing? And then just sort of ends up bottlenecking, and you end up often just skipping to the new functionality tests and parsing through the regression testing because you don't have enough time. We're collapsing all of that with automation as well, right? So you also get an increase and a reduction of that test window, right? You can do more in less time to go along with this as well. And then when you think about the costs overall, right? If I can be more productive, I can use time more to my benefit more wisely, you're going to have an improvement in that productivity, and you're going to have a decrease in cost. And with this manufacturing customer, we saw near 45% improvement in this area as well. All right. So with that having been said, thank you so much for listening to me and walking through the demo. I hope it's been powerful and helpful. We would love to be able to provide any in-depth demos that are needed for all of you and really get things kicked off and going here. For all of you that are watching this webinar, we'd like to extend a 14-day assisted trial, right, where we work with you on a given test scenario or maybe scenarios, right? We'll fudge a little bit. And if you're interested in that, contact us at info@avoautomation.com or contact our sales department off our website. And so with that, Armand, I'm going to send it back to you for what I'm looking forward to, some great Q&A. Take it away.
Thanks, Chris. That was a really insightful look into the challenges our customer faced with SAP Test Automation and how we solve them, as well as some of the benefits received from automation. Now, we just want to move on to the Q&A session, which is the favorite part of our session where we answer your questions. And there's quite a few that have already come in. And so let's go ahead and get started immediately.
Sure.
Sarah asks, is your product truly no code?
Yes. Simple answer is yes, it is. We do have a keyword capable to allow you to go a little outside of that, and we have that there for flexibility purposes. It is not required. So yes, to answer that question.
Amazing. And we've also gotten another question from Pallavi, who asks if there are any UI changes to the application. For instance, UI changes due to an infrastructure upgrade. Would the test scripts need to be redesigned?
In the mass majority of cases, no. As I pointed out, we are not location-based. Now, if you literally change the entire user interface, right, it's not so much moving fields around or identifiers, objects, logos, so much as you change the design of that, right? That's where you might need to go back and make adjustments. Now, here's the important point. Even though you have to go back and do some design or some tweaks, you're going back into and appending. So you're fine tuning with those adjustments. You're not needing to go back and create a whole new scenario, a new screen from scratch, and all the new objects. So almost think about it like I spoke of the agile scenario where you're creating the objects and you're doing that merge, right? So again, we have that situation covered.
Okay, great. And we've received another question from Neil, who asks, does your product support other web-based SAP applications like SuccessFactors or Concur?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. It supports web through and through, including other underlying technologies that often are not only showing up in web, but also new ones like Angular as well. So we have full support for web and do support those other web-based ecosystem applications within SAP.
Okay, and we'll end on this question. Anybody else, if you have any questions whatsoever, please do reach out to us at our email. But just to be aware of time, we'll wrap up here. And Robert has asked, how does this tool identify elements of the UI? What is the mechanism and what are the elements? And sorry, let me repeat that. What if the elements are dynamic in application?
We do support dynamic objects. Frankly, what I would like to do with this, I sense that the want here is to do a little bit more technical deep dive, which is going to need a bit more explanation. Let's, if we can, take that offline. Would certainly like to answer that, but I will tell you that we do support dynamic objects. And in terms of how we go about, as I mentioned before, our computer vision is really made up of our IP, a special sauce, if you don't mind, that's around algorithms to identify objects, well, identify screen types, as I noted before, and then the objects within, right? As well as the ability to handle the dynamicness of an object. And again, you can also control that within the test design, but I would really like to dig into more technically into that at a later date, just the same.
Okay, wonderful. And there are quite a few more questions that have come in from Ahmed and Maithili and quite a few of other people, but I think this is a great place to wrap up just to be aware of time. Again, everybody, if you have any questions whatsoever at all, please do not hesitate to contact us at our email ID, which is info@avoautomation.com. And please do get in touch with us for that assisted free trial that Chris was talking to about earlier. And also be on the lookout for the Amazon gift card to come into your email inbox. And I just wanted to end on by saying thank you to our speakers, Vidura, Chris, and Lisa. We really appreciate your time today. And end with thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you in the next webinar.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.